Good morning. This is Crystal Woods with Seasons in the Vine, and it's Fresh Friday. And today I want to give you a gift. I want to share with you a little bit about the way that I have learned to process life's trials and difficulties and sufferings and loss, as well as the good times. It's a lot easier to navigate those, I think. So today's focus is really going to be on dealing with loss and trials and difficulties. But what I'm sharing is something that can just transfer so easily to the good times as well. So I'm going to be a little bit transparent in just saying, like, I have experienced a lot of different ways of suffering and pain through relationships, through illnesses, and just through general loss here on planet Earth, and just different things that have happened. And I know my story is not unique in that you also in your life you've experienced hard things and hard times, and perhaps even what's happening in the world right now with this pandemic, you may be for the first time experiencing the sting of a fallen world and the unsureness of finances, of health, and be filled with anxiety, fear, panic, and worry. And so I have at times in my life experienced all of these things. Back in 2008, when the financial world came to a crash, my husband lost his business. I was laid off from my full-time job in a online teaching scenario. And we, in that time, we sought help. We know there was some government help at the time, and we sought every avenue we could. But through that, we ended up losing everything. We had an investment house, a house that we owned that was rented out, and we also had our house that we lived in. And because of his loss of employment and my loss of employment, we ended up losing both of those places. And so in this time of uncertainty financially, I have been very peaceful. That's the one thing about walking through trials, is that when they come back again, if you've been trained by them, if you've been disciplined, if you've submitted to the Lord, your perspective on them is very different. And while I understand that we could be looking at all kinds of financial ruin again, like everybody else that's out of work, and there's so many people that are being affected by this, I've walked it and I've seen the faithfulness of God in it, and we survived. And things didn't go the way we wanted. We had to grieve all of the loss. We were devastated. You know, we really felt like we were in a pocket financially. We were very successful. We had investment property. Like, we were feeling good. And it just goes to show you that in a moment, the things that you may put your security in can be taken from you. And that was a really hard time for me. It was a lot of cleansing because I had followed the Lord. But my faith walk with the Lord kind of looked like this. I really didn't have a lot of consistency where I loved him always and I prayed and read my Bible and stuff. But when it really came down to the pressure of the time, I would fold and I would be angry and I would withhold praise from the Lord. I would be withdrawing myself in those situations from him because I felt like he was abandoning us to ruin. And I really couldn't see the goodness of what was happening. Because it just seemed like everything was bad. So one thing that has consistently become a way that I have learned to fight fear, anxiety, loss, grieving, betrayal, you list it, illness, all of it, is worship. And this is the key. This is the gift I want to give you today to a lifestyle of steadfastness and faith, where we're not shutting off our worship when God isn't doing what we feel like he should be doing. We're not basing our worship on how we feel at all, but on his endlessly extravagant love towards us, his worthiness, which is never dependent on us and how we feel, and the truth that over all things, he is supreme. He's reigning. He is above all of this. And it's such a beautiful way to embrace life. And I want to share that because that is not how I really lived. This is something that even in this past 18 months of extreme pain, I have been growing in tremendously. And I feel like at this point in time, I can articulate some things. This is what worship means to me. And this is how it can keep you steady amidst anything. And I believe anything. I believe that's also the desire of the Father, to have children that are grown up in their faith, that can actually stand against trials and persecution and anything else that this world may throw at us or the enemy, with a sureness of who he is first and who we are. And so worship is obviously more than music, but that plays a huge part in my own personal life. For those of you that go to my church, then you know that worship is one of the ways that I just kind of express my love for the Lord, and it is through music. But what I'm sharing about today isn't really music. But I will tell you, last year, when I experienced the intensest betrayal of my life, which I made reference to a couple of days ago in a post, I was set to be on the team that week. And I had a decision to make. Do I go in? It was like literally 24 hours before. Or do I pull back? And I didn't sleep. I just worshiped through the night, got up, got dressed, went to church, and continued to worship. And it was hard, guys. It was hard because my heart was like shredded. But I had made the decision, and I had shared this with my friend Leah, that like the rocks are not going to have to cry out on my behalf. No matter what I'm experiencing, it doesn't change who he is. It just doesn't. And I don't know how to see him in this yet. I don't know how to see myself. I don't even know what my future holds. Like everything is such a wreck. But I'm going to worship anyway. And it was a decision. And that was something that I had to do week after week after week after week. Is that I will not let something else keep me. I will not let anything else keep me from worshiping the Lord. And I'm going to live this out publicly. And I am just going to grow. I'm going to grow up in my faith. And I'm not going to keep my worship back because I'm upset or I'm in pain or I feel like God failed me. And I can say that with total confidence because at the time I was really like, really? That happened? You know, what's up, God? You know, but I would put worship over that and let that then fall down. And so I'm going to give you 3 main points today. This is why we worship. This is my points for worship. We worship in response to, in spite of, and in regards to. So we worship in response to who he is, what he's already done for us. And he's done everything for us, guys. Like, we really need to keep it in perspective. The greatest problem we ever had, he dealt with on the cross. What he's done for us, what he's delivered me from in the past, what I'm believing him to deliver me from in the future, how he's healed me. He's loved me unconditionally. I love how Melissa Helsler puts this. Her and her husband wrote the song No Longer Slaves, which is one of my favorite. And some people ask her, like, you lose your mind every time you get to the bridge, which is he split the sea so I could walk right through it. And they ask her, like, why do you do that? You know, why is your worship so extravagant? Why is it just so over the top? And her response is, well, because he split the sea so I could walk right through it. Have you ever been against the sea and seen it parted? I feel like early on in my walk, it was never parted because I never put my foot in to let him part the water. I just held back. But this time in my life, I wanted to say, I'm going to chase after the Father anywhere he leads me. And I'm going to put my foot into the water, into the sea that's in front of me that is raging. And I'm going to watch him part it. And it has been reflected in my worship. Why do I have such exuberant worship? Well, because he's been exuberant to me. He's rescued me from everything, even myself, and every other possibility, and given me, instead of a spirit of fear, he's given me his truth. He's given me power. He's given me a sound mind. He has given me love when you would think love wasn't even possible. And so he split the sea. And my response to that is something. And so we worship in response to who he is. And then we worship in spite of. Nothing can steal our praise. And that was really like the gauntlet that I felt in this season. Like even in this, I want to worship. I want to commit to growing. I want to commit to submitting to what is happening in my life and becoming a new person out of it. This Crystal is going to die, and she's going to be resurrected more into the likeness of Jesus. And so in spite of, so nothing can steal our praise. Nothing can. We will worship through it all. There will be no rock that has to cry out on my behalf, because worship has everything to do with who he is and very little to do with what we're dealing with. He is still worthy all the time. So in spite of everything else, I will choose to worship the Lord. So be thinking about that in this time of crisis. Despite the fact I don't know what my finances are going to be, my living situations, any of it, I'm going to worship the Lord in this time, in spite of all of it. And then the other thing, the last point, is in regards to. I'm going to worship in regards to this situation, this pandemic, the financial loss. I'm going to worship because worship is a weapon. It is warfare, and worship changes things. Worship will change an environment. Worship will change our hearts. It will change our minds. It is consistently bringing the truth of God over ourselves and encouraging us to come into alignment with who he is. I'm in a different spot in my house today, if you can't tell, and my kids are like running around, but that's okay because this is life. So worship is a weapon. I have used worship in this past year to put a stake in the ground and say, no more. From this day on, I will walk a certain way. I will believe God a certain way. I will take him at his word. And I will not question. I won't wobble back and forth. If he's given me his word, I'll hold to it. And worship has been a way that I've done that. Now, music is definitely one option, but, praying to the Lord, exalting him. The scriptures are full and full and full of the different ways that you can worship God. But keep that in mind in this time of trial. Go to worship. Go to worship in regards to what your greatest fears are, your greatest anxieties, your greatest uncertainties, and worship in regards to them. Worship over them. Put the truth of God over those things, and let them then come into alignment with even how important they are. This is how your faith becomes this and this. What's in your mind and what you're going to walk out. And this is something that I'm learning in real time, day in and day out. And I wanted to share it with you because it's been profound in my growth and in my walk with the Lord. And I want to give you this gift. It has created a steadiness in me that when I feel overwhelmed, when the sea before me is raging, I will sing over that sea. I will proclaim over that sea the goodness of God, the sovereignty of God, his power, which is unmatched, his grace and his mercy and his love, which is never ending, over that sea. And I will see it calm down, and I will see it part if I take my faith and I step out into the waters. So be blessed, be deeply encouraged. It's time to do this, guys. I just feel that so strong in my spirit. Everything that's happening in the world is setting us up to be a pillar, to be people that walk out what they believe. And one of the big ways to walk that out is to be steadfast. So worship in response to who he is, in spite of what you're up against, and in regards to the things that are happening. Much love and blessing, and I'll see you next week.